einfach ein. Wenn Sie eine brauchen, hilft Ihnen Ihr Nachbar. We're going to speak English today. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our today's Telegrafen Lounge. My name is Volker Wiebrecht. Normally I work at a radio station, so I don't have a startup. I never tried one, but I'm very curious how I can actually do one because I've never been to Israel. It's a very challenging. I've never been there. I always wanted. I apologize, but I do accept invitations.
Writing that
well,
down.
Let's speak English tonight because that's the language we all have to speak once we do not want to do business. And today's basic outline can be summarized, as far as I know, in one question. Can a few Apple seeds build an entire new Apple, meaning Silicon Valley? The answer is yes, they can. Not, of course. They just can't. But what else can they do? What can these seeds do? What can they do when they're planted in Tel Aviv, when they're planted in Berlin? Do they have something in common? What do they have in common? And why is it such a hype? Because you feel like every second sentence in magazines where you actually read about startups, Israel, Germany, especially the link Tel Aviv, Berlin is the place to be. We're going to doubt that in some parts and we're going to prove it in others. Anyway, what kind of fruitful cooperation can arise from our evening tonight? We're going to see that. And I'd like to welcome Hemdat Sagi, First Secretary of Economy and Trade from the Israeli Embassy. Welcome. You get an applause, a warm one, of course. Next to her is Shelley Hood-Moyal, founder of iAngels, a business angel network. She's going to explain at first what she's going to do and what she has been doing so far. A warm welcome to you as well. The spokesman from the economical policy of the Green faction in the German Bundestag is with us, Dieter Janicek. Welcome.
Thank you.
He is very well known to the situation where he has to speak English wherever he goes. And you just start and speak and speak and speak until somebody stops you.
No other chance.
You have no other chance once you work in the policy. Okay. And finally, Mateusz Tschikowski. Oh God. Tschikowski. Okay. Mateusz Tschikowski, co-founder of the initiative Twin Tech Towns, is here as well. Thanks a lot for coming. So, yeah. In order of appearance, you're going to start and we're going to have a short, let's say, overview what they have at stake and what our guests have, let's say, in mind with our today's subject. And then we're going into discussion. Whenever you have a question, please feel free to raise your hand. You're going to get a microphone and then practice your English. All right, here we go.
So first of all, thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here today. Like it was said, I'm the founder of iAngels. iAngels is a platform and angel network that allows private investors from all over the world to invest in high-tech startups in Israel in a co-investment model that combines investing with top-tier investors in Israel, along with due diligence that our company does on the startup companies. Personally, this is actually the second time I'm in Berlin. I was last year at a networking event, also speaking about kind of the two startup hubs between Israel and Germany. So while I think that there's a lot that can be done and a lot that we can improve in terms of the network, but I think that over the last couple of years, we've really come a very long way. And it's wonderful to see how entrepreneurs are excited about coming to Germany and to Berlin specifically to do business, and also companies from Germany coming to Israel and very much involved in Israel. I can tell you that Deutsche Telekom is incredibly involved in Israel. I actually have the luxury to be working both with the venture capital arm representing Deutsche Telekom and also with the business development that's working in Israel. There are other German companies like Axel Springer and SAP that are very involved. And what we're seeing really are these global corporations getting involved in Israel technology from the very early stages of formation, creating acceleration programs and scouting talent from the very early stages, all the way up to VC investing and M&A, all of which is very exciting and fueling some of the success that we've been seeing in Israel. I think that the success and the attention that Israel has attracted over the last couple of years has been due to several reasons. Some of the most obvious reasons that you may be aware are the government programs that support and foster innovation through grants, government grants, subsidies, incubation programs. Israel also has a very significant pipeline of talent coming from the IDF. You know, a lot of even the first-time entrepreneurs that we see in Israel, they come from a significant background. They get world-class education and hands-on experience in real life and death situations. And so by the time, you know, they're 25, they've already managed a group of people and taken, you know, a significant amount of responsibilities on their shoulders. But I think even more interestingly, what has really developed the ecosystem is time. It's time. There are already several decades of a lot of activity in the technology space in Israel, and that has enabled Israel to develop a significant amount of know-how and experience in certain sectors like cybersecurity and software and internet technologies, where Israel today has a very significant edge. And the experience comes both from the investor side, but also from the entrepreneur side. We're seeing a lot of second and third time investors in Israel, third time entrepreneurs in Israel, entrepreneurs that have already sold companies in the past and then come back again to build larger companies and take on larger challenges. And they're in a position to do that because they've already learned a lot of lessons as young managers. They know what it's like to sell a company. Many of them have gained experience in marketing, because a lot of times when a company acquires an Israeli company, it actually requires the CEO and the management team to stick around for another 3 years. And then they get international experience and get better at marketing and building teams and building a culture. So they're coming back much more polished with international experience. And what's nice about Israelis is that we're very passionate about Israel. Even myself, when I finished my army service in the intelligence unit in Israel, I moved to the U.S. I went to Ivy League school, to Kellogg University. Before starting iAngels, I worked at Goldman Sachs Investment Banking Division, and I was doing technology M&A in Israel. So very international, and part of that is really to kind of build the foundation and be able to bring value and business and really kind of help build the future in Israel. And I always knew that I want to come back to Israel, and I want to kind of be a part of building Israel. And what gets Israeli entrepreneurs excited is really starting ideas and building them into companies and bringing value and being part of the next big thing. And so, you know, Israel has been exporting technology to the rest of the world. I can tell you that this is exactly what iAngels does as a business. This is part of what I'm here to do, to really kind of nurture our investment community and the corporate community that we've been in touch with. I can tell you that iAngels has been very lucky, because we've been really embraced nicely here, both from corporate investors and also from the private investors, who many of them have been supporting us, not even because of Jewish heritage, but they're doing it because it's smart business. And so naturally, I'm very passionate about building these bridges and building these partnerships. Thank you.
Just more question. What actually brought you? What was the initial spark into that business? I mean, some working with a microphone, or what was it exactly? Because you mentioned your military background. Was there like an ignition or something like that?
So first of all, it's an interesting question. A lot of times people ask me why, why the culture in Israel is so entrepreneurial. And I feel that a lot of it comes from a dissatisfaction. Israelis are very dissatisfied in general. They see a problem, they want to fix it. They see an inefficiency, and they want to kind of deal with it. And many of the technologies coming from Israel are really originating from this place. If you think about Waze, it comes from the dissatisfaction with traffic and the lost productivity resulting from it. If you think about Netafim, which is a drip irrigation system that was developed in Israel, it came because Israel suffered from serious water scarcity. And so they developed a technology that enables kind of the distribution of water to be much more efficient and cost efficient. And I think that iAngels came from a similar viewpoint. I mean, we've seen our friends and our family members and kind of the people that are colleagues from the university and the people we went to in the army. We've seen how much time they spend on the road fundraising and courting investors. And we thought to ourselves, how much more efficient can these entrepreneurs be if they're spending their time traveling, actually building partnerships and building business relationships? And we thought to ourselves that there's got to be a better way. At the same time, we saw that a lot of angels and business angels from around the world want to invest in Israel, but don't have a professional and efficient way of doing that. And so we've developed a platform that's revolutionary. Just kidding. No, but we've developed a platform that enables you and us to facilitate investment in Israeli technologies in a very professional and structured way, without anybody having to get on a plane, without anybody having to look for parking. You can literally listen to a pitch online in between meetings or on a coffee break. And that's really what our company provides, the ability to make investments, make sound investments, and do research and meet with entrepreneurs virtually.
So I freshen up my first question for you. What is it that you are not satisfied with?
What am I not satisfied with? Well, maybe I can just first explain what I do, and I have an answer for you. So I've been here for the last 4 years as the Handels- und Wirtschaftsattaché. So I'm representing the Ministry of Economy here in the embassy in Berlin. And what we do is we help Israeli companies do business in Germany. We find business partners, distribution channels, agents. So basically my clients are Israeli companies, cross-sector, and we help them on a day-to-day basis. There's a great demand from the Israeli market to do business in Germany. So iAngels, for example, is a good example for an Israeli company that we try to assist here. So being here for the past 4 years, I would say I think I have a little understanding about the German way of thinking and business culture. There was a funny incident before Shelley and we took a taxi together here. And it was already 10 to 7, and I was super nervous about being late. And Shelley was demonstrating the opposite laid-back Israeli attitude, which is, it's going to be okay. And I said, listen, I've been in Germany so long, I cannot be late. So that was a funny incident. But talking about the business cultures, that's where I have a very good, position to see, how Germans and Israeli interact. And a lot of the times it's just business and deals are not being done because of lack of understanding, because of that gap. What am I not dissatisfied? I'm not satisfied about, I would say, the Israelis, and this to top on what Shelley said about why Israel became such a startup hub. Israelis have a chutzpah, and chutzpah means audacity. So that means, they don't, consider hierarchy. If they get a no, they would try to find, other doors to get a yes, and they're very pushy. So that can help in many places. I think in the American culture, it's probably very, valued to be very pushy. But sometimes when it comes to dealing with German companies, from what I see and the feedback that I get from German corporations, and, you can imagine I'm in touch with a lot of companies that's, this company is too pushy. They need more patience. We'll get back to them, but please give them the feedback that, they need to get more, just geduld, just more patient. So this is something that I think both, the ecosystem, the startup scene in Israel can learn a lot from Germany. More patience, just, think long term. A lot of the Israeli startups basically think, how do we do an exit and as fast as we can and not scale up and not I don't think they have the tools or the know-how on how to, scale up and build huge companies. So I think that's something that the Israeli, ecosystem can learn a lot from the German one. And, on the other hand, there's also a lot of things that I see on the German, ecosystem here that I wish they could sort of take from the Israeli point of view and way of behavior.
But if you look at it historically, I mean,
Yeah.
was it like the expression of this chutzpah to go, let's go to a place where we have the biggest challenge we can find, or are there some similarities, like some challenges? Because out of our common history or not common history, it doesn't really explain by itself why there's such a strong relationship between Berlin and Tel Aviv, for instance.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to business, I don't think the history plays such a role. And the bottom line, it's business people talking to business people, and you have to sort of be competitive enough to do business here. I haven't. I've been here for 4 years. I haven't experienced the history as such a role, but it's true that alongside with the sort of the Israel and Germany coming closer, and last year we mentioned 50th. Anniversary for diplomatic relations. So all these, in time, as you said, I think the two nations have come closer, and naturally other sort of, topic sectors followed.
Yeah, but what is stimulating people from Tel Aviv coming to Berlin? I mean, what is it?
So
you don't have to flatter us, just be honest.
Yeah, so if we're talking, on the touristic side, so Berlin is basically a hotspot. I mean, that's, and Israelis are no different. No, the Israelis are no different than other, Americans and Europeans that are just flooding the city. It's, one of the most popular cities in the world. But if you're talking about Israelis that actually stay here, so, I mean, Israelis are coming here, not necessarily startups. We'll talk about the difficulties and, about, Berlin being a startup hub and what are Israeli startups not finding here. But if you're just an Israeli who wants to spend a few years in a European capital and a cheap, let's say, housing and cost of living, that's the place. It will be interesting to see how long will these, group of Israelis that are in the city now will actually stay. I think Israelis are no different than Spanish or American that are actually really wanting, to spend some time out of Israel. Israel is a hectic place. Let's not forget about it. So it's always good to sort of, breathe fresh air, and that's what draws them here. Yeah, it's all these reasons, I guess.
Well, thanks for your patience first and being on time here today. We learned a lot, obviously, about everything you know. Vice versa, obviously, there's no German politician who does not have to go to Israel to confront himself with A, history, and B, the challenges that can actually be met. What made you going there, and what have you discovered, and what did you bring back?
Well, actually, not every German politician has gone to Israel, I think, but I'd like to do that, and I've been there with a group of Elnet. Some of them are here. Leading us there as a group from German parliamentarians, and just to not only talking about history is important, but talking about business, talking about sustainability, about the beautiful Chuspe country with it's kind of complicated sometimes also for internal and geopolitical terms. So, and this brought me a big picture, and now today we talk not about geopolitics and stuff like that, but about startup scene, and we've been to Tel Aviv. And it's, for me as a politician, always important. When I travel, I do it because I like to learn something. So I've been to Silicon Valley. I'd like to go to Estonia next month because they're very great in having e-government processes. And now Israel is the country which I learned has the most investment in, the state does a lot of investment in research and bringing people together and funding. And it's coming out of the military, I know, but it's let's say, as a green politicians, even the Energiewende has been founded by a military. So let's say it's not so important where it comes from, but in the end, that there is something. So and there's a lot of interesting and competition and things where I would like to learn that we get it to Germany, because Germany is a strong country in terms of industry, high tech. 150 years tradition in industry and still leading world leaders in many parts. So I come from the south of Germany, Bavaria. We have in Bavaria and Baden-Württemberg about 3,000 world market leaders. Many of them you don't know, but they are. And we are an export country with about 40% of our GDP having products going to other countries. But where we're not so strong at the moment is being a startup nation. So. And that depends because Germany is not the country. It has not evolved as a startup nation. So the good jobs have been into the industry. They have good loans, good wages. And the German Schuspe is not so much, if you're a student in Germany, in Berlin, you're not, naturally, you're not heading for startup. So some of now try and do, and we come to the next one after me. And the city of Berlin has a really interesting ecosystem. So I know many Israelis now come for tourism. They can have good parties. It's cheap here. It's a great city. I think everyone told me when I've been to Israel, they come and have been to Berlin. That's great. And there's a really hot spot here. I don't know if some will stay. I would find it very, very great if we find a big Israeli community in Berlin again. On the other side, we have a difficult discussion in Germany. Let's don't forget it about that. Jewish people, Israeli people are not feeling so comfortable anymore in Germany because of other reasons. So we hope to find a community again here, and not only because I'd like to have Israeli peoples, because it's good for having good relations on business. That could be a good part for us to learn something and get some, and that would be my hope, some Israeli startups doing the business here. And maybe tell some of the, let's say, disrespectful, old-fashioned business leaders from Germany how to get things going, because we still have a gap there. So we're evolving something in Berlin, in Munich, in other parts of the country, but we still have a gap there. Let's say I'm from the Bundestag. The Bundestag until 2014 didn't have any committee regarding digital issues. Yeah, so it's the first time 2 years ago, and we have a big discussion. I talked to Mr. Minister Gabriel today and others, and it's a lot of debates ongoing, but we're becoming late. So we still have to learn, and it's good that you are here at the moment. Thank you. Yeah.
The thing I've learned so far before we finally get to you is obviously there's young people with a lot of creativity and curiosity meeting each other. I mean, that's obviously condition number one. But the thing I see on the Israeli side is that there's obviously an easier access to money, because it sounds like that, which is more difficult. We're going to talk about that a little later. But another thing, the mentality you would describe, I mean, if we have been described as being, let's say, I don't know whether I should use the word stable. Patience is something like I don't really connect with my own personality.
Are you a Berliner?
No, I'm not a Berliner. But obviously there's less, let's say, a less firish appearance, more patience. What is the advantage on the Israeli side as you observed it?
Well, I don't know if it's an advantage. It comes from the cultural development and history. But so in Germany, it's not really cool to fail. So in the United States, maybe it's not cool, but it's usual. So if people fail, they build up the next thing. And in Germany, many people still are keen on having safety, security on their jobs, which I can understand actually. So because they learned in the German it's Wirtschaftswunder. So we've been through the last, with some problems, the last 50, 70 years. So, but now things change, and we have the whole digitalization process, and startups are challenging also German businesses. Let's face it. Let's look to Uber or Airbnb here in Berlin as well. So for the first wave, we found some restrictions on them, but the next we will have to bring it together. So we have to be the leaders on that, I think.
I think it's Mateusz Krzyzkowski who's going to bring it all together, because exactly that is what he does. How do you do it?
Sure. First, a couple of words of background to what I'm doing. So I'm a founder and very occasional angel investor. I exited 2 startups, and my connection to Israel is that with our last startup, after we got acquired, my 2 co-founders it was an American corporation, were put in charge of European headquarters of this corporation, and this happened to be in Herzliya, Israel. So we suddenly became the first billion startup who suddenly was in charge of 50 very wild and opinionated Israelis. And out of these experiences, we founded Twin Tech Towns, and it's an association between founders from both cities where we essentially try to help each other. And this has been going on for a year. And so I've been observing a couple of things. I think I'll just try to comment on some of the things which were said. So first of all, Berlin. I came here essentially 2010, and I think we tend to forget how quickly the startup scene has actually been rising here. In 2009,
Where do you come from?
I used to live in San Francisco for 3 years mostly before that, so I actually know the American scene as well. But in 2009, there were around 5,000 people working in digital, and now it's, I think, according to the Berlin Senate, I think 60,000. And most of these people actually are not working in new technology. What Berlin and the startup community is really great at is taking existing technology and actually making business out of it. And many of the things which get invested are pretty low tech. This is quite different in the Israeli tech scene. A lot of it is very tech driven, very CTO driven, very innovative. And what we've been observing now for a year, is when I have Israelis coming here, is exactly the challenges Hamdat talks about. Is like it's a very American type of business. I would see that a way of doing it. I come here, I have something great. Let's make a deal. And for the Israelis to understand that some of the deals will take 2 years, and that especially German corporations are really slow adopters, and that there's a certain process. One of my friends was shocked and personally offended that they didn't get back to her within 2-3 weeks. And I was trying to explain to her, they're not impolite in silence. They're not, it's not finished. They're actually going step by step, and there's a due diligence process. And she was shocked to be in a meeting like a couple of weeks later, where they understood her proposition of in such a detail, and she was like, this could never happen. And she was calling me, Matthias, I have to make them a better deal, and these kinds of things. So it's actually like a lot of the work what you do. And I think just to comment on what you're talking, I think it's very early days. It's like Berlin and Tel Aviv is talked about a lot, but I think like essentially we've been really working with each other for 2-3 years. And in Berlin, it's mostly through advertising technology. I would argue that in high tech, Tel Aviv has at least 10 years is ahead of what we're doing. And they had like great companies in advertising technology already, which are on the stock exchange. And we now essentially had a couple of rocket internet startups now happening, which are the first wave. And now in advertising technology, that's companies like Adjust, like Hitfox. Now we meet each other actually, my generation, right? We have clients, we work with each other, we have the same interests, and we call each other. Yesterday, like in cloud technology, there was an Amazon meeting, and now it's the first generation probably of people my age where we help each other. And there was a company called SpotIns, and suddenly they have this type of people who actually help them to sell into corporations. Today I was on a phone call as part of Tech Towns where we were talking, you may have heard about the big announcement around Facebook and Messenger bots. And we were really talking about like new technologies for that. And there will be an Israeli startup coming to a meetup next month. But this is like really, really first steps. And because like for us, like we're really only growing now to do like really more higher tech. A couple of challenges, Foster. I actually think now, listening to the fate of my Israeli fellow co-founders, it's actually way worse to raise money in Israel for seed. A couple of times sakes. We are overrun by Israelis. Like in Techstars, and there were over 120 applications from Israeli trying to get cash here. I think Hamdat will challenge that of what they do, and I'll let her talk to it because we actually already debated that. But this is something which here, it's much easier to be riskier. If I do something really, really crazy, in Israel, I have all these Americans and corporations who are already on the ground, and Apple is coming to my office every 3 months, and so does Microsoft and Yahoo, and I can do risky things. Here, I'm crazy if I do risky things, because like then I'm on the street and everyone think I'll failure. Yeah. That's what this reason behind this risk aversity is actually way more structural in how we go about things. And for me to raise money here for something really techy is really, really difficult. What I would love to have is Berlin startups going to Israel instead of Silicon Valley and actually have it work with Israeli technologists and us working way closer together and possibly co-investments happening, but maybe you will be managing that, shall we?
Do we all agree that we do not only have like a random relationship between two towns, we have a real phenomenon? Do we all agree on that? I mean, do we have a strong connection here that is reliable already? Or is it just like a weak string that can be cut through quite easily? Just a question for everybody.
Sure.
You want to go first? You just keep going. Yep.
Just keep going.
First of all, I just wanted to say that some of what Matthias said, it really resonates with me, and I agree 100%. I think that there are a lot of synergies between Israel and Germany, and it speaks to some of the things that were mentioned. Israelis are very good at starting, at thinking of ideas, at building a technology. They're very flexible. They're good at being agile. And Germans are much more structured. They have very high standards. They're much more kind of perfectionist in their approach and much more structured in general. And I think
plus
that
we have a bigger market.
you have a huge market, and in fact, you can build a really good and big business just based on the German market. This is why Israelis, by the way, go to market faster, because they think global from day one. But I think that what's interesting between kind of Israel and Germany is that when you think about the strengths of each nation, it's almost like the yin and the yang. And at the end of the day, for a business to really be successful, you need a little bit of both. And this is what Israelis can learn from Germans, and what Germans can learn from Israelis. And I think that the combination and kind of working together can help Israeli companies and German companies be innovative and be able to grow together. And a couple of last year I sat on a panel, and people were kind of talking about Israeli startups and why they don't come to Germany as often as they should. And some of the people on the panel were saying, look, it's really hard to come to Germany. The cycles are really, really long. The customers have very high standards, and there's also a language barrier, by the way. And I was saying, and another person was saying, but actually, when you think about it, it's also a very big opportunity, because once you make your product fit for the German market, it can literally work everywhere. And if you wait and you have kind of the patience to kind of wait for that kind of long cycle to come to conclusion, you're actually likely to win a very good and strong relationship that can last for a very long time.
But back to the string question.
Yeah,
Do we have
Berlin, Tel Aviv.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's nice for the media, and Berlin, two sexy cities. But if we're talking about business, I look at, Germany as a whole and Israel as a whole. I think that, Berlin doesn't have much industry. I mean, the industry is outside of Berlin. So the startups that approach me, I send them, I connect them to companies in Bavaria and NLV and Hamburg. So it's not necessarily, the Berlin city that will sort of make them successful. They need to leave Berlin to find the clients. And, just to get back to my comment on why, how come there's not 200 Israeli startups in Berlin, like in New York. And in New York, actually, every month I read somewhere there are 10 Israeli new startups that are, moving to New York. And the reason is, and I spoke with my colleague in New York, is that, the Israeli market is a very consumer-oriented market, and the Israeli companies are, they need to be close to their clients. So they need to develop together the product. And in New York, you can find the fintech, the media, and the advertising industries. And that's not so much the case in Berlin. So, the day-to-day, assistance that we give to Israeli startups and the connection, between the startup and the giants and the Mittelstand as well, it's not happening in Berlin. Let's face it. What Berlin offers is, as you said, a lot of seed, funding, a lot of accelerators, corporations that are coming here and establishing accelerators, but not, the real, let's say, cooperation or
we have a precious little flower, but we don't have a big tree that is reliable, that is really bearing fruits
I don't know.
already.
It depends. What's the mission of Berlin? Does Berlin want to be like Munich? Does Berlin? I think Berlin.
McKinsey says it can be leading city for startups until 2020.
Yeah, in certain elements, definitely. And I totally agree that I think Berlin is only in the starting phase, and even it will be fascinating to see where it grows. But currently, this is how I see it.
Is that a hopeful smile, or is it just you doubt it because we don't have enough money that can be, let's say, risen? Because everywhere in Europe, except Israel, we have funding gaps wherever we look. That is another diagnosis.
We definitely have funding gaps in Germany, and I think we never will have the same funding ecosystem as in Silicon Valley or stuff like that. So that will not be the German business model. So we try to close some of the gaps. That's important, and it's true. Berlin is great for growth of startups for the last years, and it will grow further. But on the other side, Germany is bigger than Berlin. So I'm coming from Munich. The industry, 8 of the 30 DAX biggest companies are in Munich. So, and there's also a really growing startup scene outside of the Technische Universität of Munich, so university. So there is, I think, for not only for Israelis, for everyone, Germany has to think of it. How can we make ourselves more attractive for bringing those really great technology, especially for technology startups, to work together with our industry and to speed up our startup scene. So, and this is 2 different goals and tasks, because the industry is quite strong in Germany, and there's a lot of money to do with German industry, as we look at the automotive industry, chemistry industry, with some problems, the finance and banking industry, but they all have to modernize themselves, and they're all world market leaders in various aspects of the global business. So Germany is an attractive part of the world for doing investment, but we not like just come here and scale up very fast. That's not how it's working at the moment, and I think it won't work in 3 or 5 years. That like some would hope so. I think, yeah.
Since it's a pleasant gathering here, let's try to accelerate and deepen the context. So what is actually missing from your point of view? You actually said, well, we always stated, well, surprise, surprise, it's the money, it's the readiness to undergo risks, obviously. What else?
Let me rephrase it, even like from possibly Hamdat's perspective. Like, what's missing for the Israelis is, like, I think Israeli startups can now do business in Germany for advertising technology because we're connected, and it totally works. The networks are working, which didn't exist 3 years ago, on like more software and cloud technologies. Like I was yesterday at the Amazon Summit, and it was all working. It was
one quick question between. Are we talking about how many people? I mean, we're talking about like 100, 1,000, 10,000. I mean,
we're now in the hundreds. But like what I'm trying to say is, in 3 years ago, there may be less than 10. Right. So we're trying to increase it. But this is, it's a pioneering phase. People are, it's the first friendships which happen. It's the first business relationships which happen and which blossom, where we figure certain things out together and start growing it bigger and grow also our ambitions. From an Israeli perspective, I think a lot of what Hamdat was talking about New York is actually their bias and their challenges. The Israelis are doing something which I call the American front. Waze was a great example. It was 100 people in Tel Aviv in Herzliya, 3 people in America, in San Francisco at a co-working space, and they were pretending to be a global company. But it was a big success in Israel. It's often used example. They exited for $1 billion for Google. But what the investors would have wanted to happen is if this has become a business. And this is a challenge from a investor perspective and a founder's perspective. They won't do that. And for them, primarily Berlin is less, like for some seed stage founders, it's like a step over to get some seed funding. But what they want to figure out is how to sell to us and with us. From a Berlin startup perspective, I wish a lot of Israeli VCs would invest in our very, very techy startups. There's no one, there's some East Coast investment from the US here. We have now around 50 American active VCs, but it's mostly East Coast, and they're not that, and that's missing. Like, if you have a really, there's always in politics this debate, the next Google or something super risky. There's no investors for this like this here, be it on the angel side or on the institutional side.
Any questions from the audience so far? There are 2 microphones. Just following. All right, then. And
also get us a couple of planes and bring 10,000 Israeli techies over.
That's funny because
what do you need them for? Sorry, I mean we take requests. So 10,000. What for?
But
Anything like the problem is that unfortunately our great techies prefer to stay in Bavaria and go to Siemens, right? They don't end up here.
But yeah, maybe we can give an example of an Israeli company that just opened in Berlin, and Shelley and I spent the day there. It's just around the corner. It's called Mindspace, and it's a co-working space, an Israeli company.
Just advertised today on Facebook. I really thought of moving in there.
It's a gorgeous, gorgeous, co-working space, and it's, beautifully designed. And they come from Tel Aviv. They chose Berlin as their first international site. And it's great. So you see, people are connecting, and a few Israelis are there. Also, an Israeli VC, one Israeli startup that I met there, and Germans together. And basically, it gives an opportunity for the Germans to have a second international office in Tel Aviv. Because if you have a card of Mindspace, then you can, basically enjoy the offices in Tel Aviv and Berlin. Maybe that's a start to expand the corporations.
Well, what about more money? I mean, do you see any sources for that? Or do we have to rely on Exit, which is a federal program? Or Exist? No, it's not Exit, it's Exist. Which is a big difference, I am afraid.
Well, there are some laws now ongoing, and will improve the situation, I think, for the next month and years. But as I told you, it won't be the Silicon Valley. So it will be better, and it's good. And on the other side, Germany has to say, okay, we have our own strengths. So we have this network of Mittelstand and industry and services and a huge market, and we're building up the European digital single market together, have our own standards. And then maybe we have to find some projects. We have some infrastructure to build up in Europe and the whole world for the next decades, for Energiewende, for the new sustainable mobility thing, what will happen to the automotive industry. They will be challenged a lot by startups and new kinds of transport, for example. So this is also a thing which Germany has to be aware of and has to fund and has to do some research, and all the big businesses have to find the collaborations. Maybe they try now, even the Deutsche Telekom, all they have their own incubators. But it's only the start now, so it has to grow and has to be better. Yeah.
I know you're not spin doctors for German politicians, but I don't think you need of help in particular. But if you look at it and could express your wishes, I mean, for the German market, which provide better conditions for the Israeli companies and startups, what would you think of in the first place?
Myself. First of all, I must kind of disclose that I'm not that familiar with the German government, but I can say that in general, and it's not only for Germany, I think that the most important thing is not to place restrictions on business and commerce, and to make it super easy for investors to invest. Investors care about taxes a lot, and if there are tax issues with investing in German companies, then they're going to make an issue out of it, and they're going to require the German company to create a U.S. company or something like that. In addition, any problems in getting money out of Germany can also create issues for investors and for capital to come abroad. I can tell you that sometimes in Israel, and I don't know if it happens in Germany, but sometimes when a company exits, it can take literally a year or even more until kind of the tax authorities and the government release the funds back to investors. And this can be incredibly traumatic to an investor, even if he does get everything that he deserves, just kind of the process and the bureaucracy. So I think that governments should try to be very supportive of commerce and to make it super easy to do business and to invest cross borders.
So I learned we have a lot of patience, but we lack tax, as far as I know. Is that the right word, the tax? Is that the generation 30 years younger than me will self-developed, or are they educated universities? I mean, what is that creativity risen by?
I think Hamdad will talk about more about the army and what is happening there, and also the technicons. I think it's not even like learning a particular skill, at least. It's just much more, or the system is in such that you as a technology person are like incentivized to become a founder, and also someone who's experimenting, right? And what happened then since a couple of years is that they have like a virtuous circle of role models who are technology people. And we don't have that. We don't have we have that in the car industry. But to be a startup person in the car industry, you need a couple $100 million, and who's gonna give it to you? So there is like patents happening and innovation happening, but it's happening within corporations. And then the great ideas never get adopted. And I think what Israelis have is young people who are like super talented people who instead going to corporations. It's a really great path for them to join startups and make their great insights and skills into new company and new product.
But do you think it would speed up the entire process if we had the same approach as Ms. Moyal had, because it was like a periodic act, just going back to Israel and thinking, giving with something back?
I think actually, I think it's here. It's already starting to happen naturally. It's a much smaller flower. It's not the rocket internets, right? They're trying to with Zalando to be way more technological, and they have now 1,000 engineers. Right, but it's like one of the first tries where somebody tries to do something more technological and still within an already pretty mature startup. For us, it's the early days. The best thing which Berlin is doing right now is labor laws. It's the best place in Europe to hire international talented people. If I really want some Israeli or a Russian or an American, I know the people at the Berlin government, and within 2 weeks they are here. This doesn't happen in Israel. This doesn't happen in London. In turn, it's like if my American friends, they announce a 30-40 million investment round in New York or in San Francisco, they get an email from the city of Zurich or a city of London with like tax reductions for 10 years within 24 hours. None of the German cities are doing it, right? But the best thing why SoundCloud is here, many others are here, is our labor laws. I think the taxes are okayish, but I think there's like a lot of cultural challenges, and we have like 3-4 tax now corporations here and associations and lawyer associations who actually make this type of deals. Okay. But this is early days.
To me, the possibilities are clearly expressed, like the basic conditions or present conditions are described. Now let's get to work. So what is the next step? What are you working on as a next project? Not tonight, but in the run of the next days or weeks.
Wow. Well, I have I have to sum up 4 years because I will go back to Israel in a few months. I will finish my diplomatic post here. So I have sort of a very personal, yes, professional project that would be very difficult because, being in Germany for many years and learning so much and gaining friends, that was an amazing experience. But I think, what I try to achieve in the 4 years is really building, strong foundations and the basis in my team and just improve the service that we give to Israeli companies. And also, we have a great network of companies and associations in Germany. And I think, there's so much work here. I could stay here for 5 more years and still enjoy it because there's so much potential, so much interest on both sides that I'm really curious to see where it's. And I'm just a really small portion of it. And all these players here and all this ecosystem. There's so many other people that are supporting that. So I'm really curious to see where these relations will lead to.
Well, that was a lot of enthusiasm and clearly expressed through your eyes. Okay, yeah. That's going to be helpful because a good vibration is always needed. So your next steps to improve, let's say, the Tel Aviv-Berlin connection, is there anything in particular you're thinking of?
Well, look, I first of all, I think this isn't going to be the last time I come here. I've been coming here more often, and I was very lucky kind of to be embraced here by some of our investors and supporters and advocates, and and really continuing to build these bridges and building long-term partnerships and get investors and companies to come to Israel, not just to do a deal, but really to kind of build long-term partnerships. And I think that the most important values are really trust, transparency, win-win, and we really try to promote that among our entrepreneurial community, not to kind of negotiate to their short-term advantage, but rather to think about things for the long term, because that's how we take both Israel and Germany to the next level.
Politicians always have to come up with solutions, so what is your next solution you can contribute?
Well, there's a lot of things to do for bringing digitalization in Germany as a front runner, I think. So we have so many debates on it, bringing fast internet, having net neutrality, having the digital market in Europe so that everyone has the same level playing field, which is very important because there's also a speech barrier within Europe. We have 28 different countries. So, but what I'd love to take with me for tonight is that if Berlin could be, let's say, a place for a growing Israeli-German collaboration and investments and business and people bringing people together, I'd love to help to do that. That's really important, I think. Yeah.
The only one I know, who I know of what he's doing next is Mateusz. He's going to make phone calls, networking.
And actually also closing deals, hopefully. But the
Never sleep.
Like privately, I'm working with very techy startups, and quite often, like today, I'm calling Israel to discuss with some peers. I'm investing and.
What's your favorite project? Your favorite project? I mean, your heart project in present.
Right now, it's a lot about data. We generate way more data, and also computers become way more smarter in understanding pictures. So, like essentially, you will like imagine a video. And suddenly the computer can tell you actually what it sees, and it stops popping up in your vision. So we have this a lot of technology around that, which is really amazing. But like so that's my personal. But like the more practical thing is actually together with an Israeli-American VC and an American very innovative startup plus Mindspace, we are thinking about doing a small event where we try to bring the people together who are actually interested and passionate about bringing both towns together.
But you didn't have these additional informations on your glasses during this
Not
event.
yet.
All right.
Not yet.
Normal glasses yet. Okay, thank you everybody here on stage. Thank you for the insight you gave for the first step into a big, let's say, realm that is at least possible. Not always, let's say, given with the best conditions that could be there, but we've seen, I think, some solutions that could arise from the near future, especially through your work. So I'd like to thank Shelley Hott-Moyal, Hemdat Sagi, Dieter Janecek, and Mateusz. Thank you very much. And a few more remarks, which I'm going to make on German. Die ganze Geschichte finden Sie in den Netzgeschichten noch einmal auf blog.telekom.com. Die Netzgeschichte zum einen und noch ein weiterer Hinweis. Am 3. September findet die 4. Lange Nacht der Startups statt. Über 150 ausgesuchte Startups präsentieren sich den internationalen Kapitalgebern, die ja jetzt hier gerne herkommen werden, weil sie wissen, das Geld wird gebraucht. Mit mehr als 3000 Teilnehmern gehört diese Veranstaltung zu den größten ihrer Art in ganz Europa. Und Israel wird dieses Jahr Partner des Events sein. Also mehr gibt es auf startupnight.de. And we're going to see you there, right?
Yeah,
You'll be back.
Yeah, for
back.
sure.
And now, something to bite, something to drink. And the main issue is of every night like that is networking. Please do so. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.